Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here and welcome to week 11 of my EID, I'm going to start saying EID, my EID vlog series. So I completed my 11th session today, I'm over halfway through, which feels really, feels really overwhelming because I honestly thought that I wouldn't be able to complete this process, which is actually part of my own filters of feeling like I'm defective in some way, or you know how I've spoken before about when you have mental illness, people calling you like lazy and all those kind of things, and then you realise that actually you're not those things at all. You've just been living with an illness which has been untreated, and with the right help your actual personality emerges. So that's kind of what I'm feeling like. I feel like I'm discovering more about myself through this process, which is amazing because you kind of assume that once you've hit your kind of... I thought when I was at 24, I thought I knew my personality, but I'm kind of getting to know myself even better, and it's in a really nice way as well, because like loads of these things that I always like hated about myself, like thinking I was this like lazy person who could never stick to anything and never make it to the end of something, those things were never true. It was just that I was living with an illness that I didn't know how to handle, and the people around me didn't know I had. So obviously I was going to struggle with some stuff. I really feel like this is paying off, and I'm not being paid to say it, and I have no reason to say it if it wasn't true. Nobody in my group even knows that I do these vlogs. I mean, I'm allowed to do like vlogs as long as I don't talk about anything confidential to do with the others in the group or anything like that. I asked at the beginning of the session if that was alright. But yeah, no one actually knows I do these and put them on YouTube, and no one involved in like the top part of the group, like the management of the group, knows about this. So yeah, I'm not just saying this to sort of like boost them up or anything. Genuinely, I feel like I'm changing as a person. It's such a valuable thing, and I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity, and yeah, I'm just so lucky to have been put on this programme, because it's changing so much and in such a short space of time, because 11 weeks is really not much. If you think about your life, it's only a few months really, isn't it? I actually offered a continuum to the group today. So what we do is we write a continuum if we have like a big emotional situation or a feeling, and we talk about the stages of it, so 1 to 5. I've spoken about this before, and we offer them up in the group, a couple of us every week, and I volunteered mine today, and the woman who is like in charge of the group, who is actually so lovely, she said that she asked me how I was finding the process, and said did I personally see a change, and I kind of at first I was like, what do you mean? And I know I shouldn't make this about other people because it's got to be about like myself, but I kind of felt like she was proud of me, and I felt like proud of myself because I feel like I'm seeing a change in myself, and being vulnerable and opening myself up is really helping, because it's scary to talk to a group about these extremes, but it's working, so I'm engaging and I'm proud of myself for doing that. So today we were looking at managing problems, so we went back to that autobiography in 5 short chapters. So it's that one about the hole in the sidewalk, and the one this week is simply I walk down another street. So if you'll recall in previous stanzas of this poem, someone walks down a street and there's a hole in the sidewalk and they fall into it, and then the next time they pretend they don't see it and then they fall in, and the next time they see it and they fall in again, but then they get out, and then the next time they see it and they walk around it, sensible, and this time we just walk down another street entirely. So obviously that's like incredibly simplistic. It can't be described like that really, but what it means is that the problems in your life will always be there, in the sense that we can't stop problems from happening. Like no matter how well you were anyway, there would be problems in life, everyone gets them, but we are in complete control of how we deal with those problems and how we manage them. And that doesn't mean in like a blaming way, like that's not trying to shame you for your emotions. In fact, what we're learning in the group is that the emotions you feel are actually normal and there's nothing shameful about them. Like if you have EID, yeah, you're going to get emotions in a bigger way to other people. It's not the emotions that should ever be a shameful thing. In fact, like in some ways, I've spoken about this before, it can be a strength to have really strong emotions, but we need to make sure that we're protecting ourselves with those, because we're a bit extra vulnerable to that. So we're not in control of the emotions that we feel, and nor should we have to be. Like the emotions are a part of us and they come from our experiences and our filters, but we are in control of our reaction to those emotions and how we then go on to manage a problem. So something it says here in the work is make no major decisions during an emotional intensity episode, and this was in previous ones as well, but I think this is true of anyone, so I think this is probably helpful for people even who don't have like EID. But when you're really upset about something, that is not the best time to maybe talk to someone about it or be vocal, because a lot of the time, like, you know, if you're like having an argument or something and you're in the heat of the moment, you might say something you don't mean and then you'll regret it, and it's something that you wouldn't have said otherwise. So basically what they're saying is don't make any life decisions or anything when you're in that really high emotion state. So what we're trying to practice instead, because for someone like me or for someone like us with this disorder, we experience the emotion so strongly that sometimes it is to our detriment, not because of the strong emotion, but because we act a certain way in an emotional state, and then when the emotional state has calmed down, we think, oh, okay, I could have handled that much better. So something I've been working on, I've spoken to you about this before, is when I have an issue or I feel offended or upset or like someone's treated me a certain way, instead of like immediately being like really angry about it in the moment, even if I keep that anger, I'm not saying the anger is wrong, but what I do is I use it and I articulate to myself first, like, why I'm upset. Like, am I being reasonable about this? I think about it to myself, and if I think about it after that period of time and I think, yeah, I still stand by that, then what I do is I try and communicate to the person in a polite way, but a sort of a strong way. That's the thing I find hard as well, like, because like I told you before, I value being polite, of course I do, and like you shouldn't be rude to people, but at the same time you've got to stand up for yourself. And yeah, I'm starting to assert myself and my boundaries and be able to speak to people if they, you know, are hurtful or do something that is wrong in a way that is mature and in a way that gets the best possible outcome for myself. Because we've been thinking about that a lot today as well. We've been thinking about how we can come up with solutions to our problems and weighing up the pros and cons of each option. So the first step, I'm just going to go through this with you in like the steps that I remember them from today. I'm not really going to use the paperwork that much because it's really personal anyway. But the first step is, when the big emotional thing has happened, is that you have to first distance yourself. Yeah, okay, distance and distract. So the first step is obviously to use like meditation, use the safe place imagery, listen to music, go for a walk, like just distance and distract yourself, because before anything else can be done, the first step is to get from 5 down to about a 3, and it is possible, but obviously it takes work and practice, and it's something that I'm still working on, but that's the first step. So the second step is to communicate, and that doesn't necessarily mean with other people, but it can mean like with yourself. So it says here you can fill out an emotional intensity continuum, but it could just mean like writing down your thoughts and identifying how you feel, why you feel that way, and what the event was that triggered it. I think also if you've got it all listed down like that, then it helps you later when you are calmer, you can see if you were being reasonable or not, because a lot of the time when you have mental illness, people will really gaslight you, because they will say, oh, it's just your illness making you be a certain way, and actually that's a way that those people can abuse you and abuse your trust, because it's not your illness. They can just use that as a get out of jail free card. So having that stuff written down means that you can see the facts on the paper, you can see the event, you can see your reaction, and when you're calmer you can look back at that and see, okay, did I overreact or is there an issue here? So the next thing you do is you identify any potential distorted thoughts and then you challenge them. So the distorted thoughts I'm talking about are, for example, if you overgeneralize something or you have a selective negative focus. So maybe you've been looking at a situation and you've only seen the negative and you've assumed negative intent that wasn't there. There's magnification, where you can see something as a bigger issue than perhaps it really needs to be because of your emotion. But then there's also, of course, there's minimization, where in order to not cause a fuss, maybe you've let some bad stuff happen and you've let it slide because you don't want to cause a problem yourself, which is another huge issue. There's superstitious thinking, so, you know, thinking something like, oh, because I said this, such and such will happen, which obviously there is no there's no basis in reality for that at all. I went through all that in a previous video, so I won't go through that again, but yeah, you get those distorted thoughts and then you challenge them. And again, this is a way of seeing what issues are there and what issues perhaps come from your filters. So for example, so Dan might be chilling out with me at home, as we often do, and he might, I don't know, fall asleep. I mean, that is a kind of real example in the sense that yes, he will fall asleep in the chair like a cat. It's actually very cute. But if I was having a really bad day and say that I was lonely and Dan had just like gone to sleep in the chair, what I might think is, oh, you know, he doesn't want to spend time with me, so he's sleeping, which I'm not saying is a real situation, it's just an example that could be used. So it's taking something which is kind of neutral, which is Dan has fallen asleep on a chair like a cat, and making it about your filters, which is, I feel worthless, I feel defective, I feel like no one cares about me, so you're kind of making it about that. So what you do to challenge that is you would say, well, wait a minute, there's lots of reasons why Dan may have fallen asleep. With Dan, it's probably because Dan's been out partying the night before, or he's been up watching a TV show, therefore he is exhausted. He is replenishing himself for another night on the town. So the next step, once you've really identified what the problem is and what comes from your filters, because you have to make that separation, you have to be able to see what is an issue with maybe with other people and what is an issue with me, then you have to try and work on a solution, which is hard because obviously there isn't a solution to every problem, and often if there's a problem it's to do with someone else and you can't control how they react. So in an ideal world, of course, like for example if someone is really horrible to you and you bring that to them, in an ideal world that person would then say, I'm really sorry, I didn't mean it, or I didn't think about it that way, and I really care about you, and then you would be friends again and all would be well. But that isn't what life is like, obviously, that's not what people are like, and as much as we wish that the people around us were all nice, fair people, you know, you are going to meet people in life who are not like that. You're going to meet people who are just, they're just not nice, and that's kind of the control fallacy again, isn't it? It's the fallacy of fairness. It's this idea that as much as we want the world to be fair and for people to be nice, there are going to be people like that out there. And all we can do is do our best to be good people and to try and make the world a better place. We can't change their behaviour, as sad as it is, and it doesn't reflect on us in any way. So, for example, when I'm thinking of like solutions, advantages and disadvantages, let's use the Dan asleep on the sofa example again. So one solution could be, I want Dan to wake up because I want us to watch some TV, so I could throw something at him to wake him up. That's one solution. So I would look at the advantages and the disadvantages of this. So the advantage would be Dan would be awake and I would then have Dan there with me present. The disadvantage would be Dan would probably be quite irritated and vexed that I had woken him from his slumber. Probably the best solution would be something that would concern myself in that situation. Again, this is not a real situation, I need to emphasise that. But something better would be wait till Dan wakes up, and then when he wakes up say, Dan, did you go to sleep because you didn't want to hang out with me, or did you go to sleep because you were tired? At which point most likely Dan would say, I was tired, unless Dan was in a sarcastic mood, in which case he'd probably say something like, you know, I wasn't even sleeping, I was just pretending to be asleep the whole time to avoid your face. So that's kind of the gist of how you would manage the problems, and I'll get more into detail with this. And again, I've only just learnt this, so I'm probably not describing this perfectly right, but that's kind of what I've taken from it, and I'm sure my understanding will grow on this. But I think something else interesting that we learned today, which was valuable to me, is when we're thinking about the problems that we have, sometimes the problem is not the problem, if that makes sense. So we might have something that came up in the group today, just like any random example, is someone might be angry at their husband because they didn't take the bins out, and it might turn out to be like a huge argument and this huge explosion of anger, but it's not actually them not taking the bins out which causes that much anger. It might be like deeper issues of feeling underappreciated, and like maybe you're taking all the household tasks on your shoulders and you're not having support, and it might be even deeper than that. You might feel like the relationship itself is one-sided, so it's all like much deeper. And that really helps with something like BPD, because when we react to really small things, it's usually from a bigger feeling and a vulnerability. And that is a good thing, actually, because it means that we can work on that and feel slightly better, because no matter what somebody else does to us on the outside, we are still in control of the way we think about ourselves and the way we deal with our own thoughts. Like, for example, I've experienced a lot of trolling online, and sometimes I'm absolutely fine with it. I've experienced it for ages, and when I say I'm fine with it, don't do it, it's not great. But it's not something which really personally gets to me always. But if I'm feeling particularly low, for example, and I see someone tweeting me or sending me a message that says kill yourself, it won't get me if I'm in an okay place with myself. If I'm feeling confident in myself in that moment, that means nothing to me. I can see that as just somebody that is sending something nasty, and I pity them and I think that's their issue. But if I've got my own issues going on, so my own filters, if I'm feeling in that moment worthless and I'm feeling suicidal and I'm already feeling like the world would be better off without me, that's when those words have power, and they have the power because that's already going on inside my head, so it kind of validates what's happening in my head. I love that we're being taught that they're not trying to say to us, oh, the problem isn't there, because I find, and I know I always bring this back to social justice dynamics, but it's so harmful when there's an issue and it's like tone policing, and it's like, oh, you're upset, well, you don't have a right to be upset, and you're making a big deal out of nothing, and you being upset is making the issue happen in the first place. That is actually not what we're being taught. What we're being taught is that the problem very well may exist. We need to examine it to make sure that, you know, we are not approaching it when we're at the emotional 5, because we might then overblow it at that point, or maybe we might even minimise it, but the problem might be there. What we have to know is that we are only in control of ourselves. All we can do is look out for ourselves and control our own actions. We can't control how other people treat us. We need to be strong enough, and like, I need to be strong enough, that if someone I love and cares about says something to me, like, you know, if someone were to say to me I was useless or something like that, I need to be strong enough in myself that my internal monologue doesn't go to, oh yes, of course I am. It needs to go to, wait a minute, let's look at that. Am I useless? And then I need to list all the stuff where I'm not useless, you know, I'm actually quite good at some things, and I think that I have done some nice things in life, and a lot of people do appreciate me, and like my friends and my family, and that's what needs to be going on in my head. I need to be confident in myself, and it's that self-confidence and that self-worth that is going to get me to a place where I can be more confident and stand up for myself more and endure more of that. I think going back to the idea of the way other people act not being in our control, I think sometimes a choice does have to be made, and we spoke about this in the group today, and you know, it might be that sometimes in life relationships have to end, or you have to stand up for yourself even when it will be to your detriment, you know, you have to stand up for what is right and have your boundaries, and in some ways that might be difficult for you. And I know it's really hard to confront people if you feel like you've been wronged, especially if you like respect that person or you admire them or they're a family member, but the most important thing is that you have that sense of self-worth in yourself. And I personally think it's an advantage to have that integrity and to speak your mind and to be able to articulate to somebody how you feel and to try and be as honest as possible. So I do see that as an advantage. I know it's incredibly difficult. I've had situations like this myself in the past where, you know, it would be easier to just not say anything and let something continue, but it's better for us mentally to speak, because at least then we're showing that respect for ourselves and we're allowing ourselves to grow, and it's that sense of self-love. And I know it's extreme, but for example, if you're in a situation where maybe it's a relationship and it's not working out and you try and communicate it to somebody, to your partner, and it's just you're not getting anything back, one of the possible solutions might be that the relationship has to end. And that's why this task is so hard, because you have to really weigh these things up, and sometimes it is a sacrifice, but in some ways it's teaching us to kind of put ourselves first in that situation in terms of protecting ourselves, not in a selfish way, not like you come before anyone else, but we deserve and you deserve to be protected and safe and have that respect and that dignity, and no one has a right to try and bring you down in that way and overstep your boundaries. Okay, I'm gonna go now. That was Managing Problems Part 1, so I'm sure we'll have Part 2 next week. I love you loads. I will see you for week 12. I hope you're doing really well, and there's only one episode of Game of Thrones left, my friends. And I'm scared. And I'm already mourning Jaime and Cersei. So sad that they've gone. Okay, I love you loads, and I'll see you really soon. Sansa Stark for Queen of the North, and also Queen of the Seven Kingdoms. Why the hell not? Alright, love you. Bye!